Whenever we consider Christ's thoughts on citizenship, we often refer to the sermon in Matthew chapter 22 verse 21. Render therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. It is the classic invocation of the separation of church and state. But is this the only teaching that Jesus has on citizenship? Is his message and mission only limited to religious affairs? And is citizenship a mere political exercise devoid of redemptive value?
We don't think so. In fact, Jesus' life and teachings elevate the purpose and action involved in responsible citizenship. Specifically, we believe that Jesus' call to citizenship is not encapsulated in Matthew chapter 22, but in Luke chapter 10, verses 30 to 37. When a scholar of the law pressed Jesus to define who our neighbor is, he told him this parable. It's good to read it together. A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among robbers, who stripped him and beat him, and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a priest was going down the road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But the Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion, and went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he set him on his own beast, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him. And the next day he took out 2 denarii, and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will repay you when I come back. Which of these 3 do you think proved neighbor to the man who fell among robbers? He, the scholar of the law, said, The one who has shown him mercy. And Jesus said to him, Go and do likewise.
What we just read is the parable of the Good Samaritan. We dare say that Jesus left us this parable to remind us of the ultimate example of citizenship for every Christian. Having said that, we may be asking, how do we populate society with Good Samaritans? St. Luke does not really expound on the background of Good Samaritan, but from his actions it is not difficult to infer that he must have seen this good example from other people. Could it be that he saw this in society itself? Possibly. But the priest and the Levite were not as merciful as the Samaritan. Even if these men came from the same nation as the wounded man, there seems to be a big difference with the way they treated the victim. They did not see him as a neighbor. Instead, they saw him as an other. So, where could he have learned to show mercy and compassion to a stranger? Our hunch is that he must have learned it from his family.
Allow us to backtrack a bit. After all, we have to explain why the Good Samaritan is not only an example of a true Christian, but also a civic-minded citizen. What do we mean by a civic-minded or responsible citizen? In legal terms, citizenship refers to a person's membership to a nation-state, the identification of which enables us to determine the rights and responsibilities we receive from our respective governments. Viewing citizenship this way makes citizens look like passive recipients of government action, for better or worse. Another common way of defining citizenship is membership in a political community, be it a state, nation, political party, people's association, or even a clan. Defining it in this way allows us to see the citizen not as an object of government action, but a subject, a protagonist in the life of the polity. However, it is still possible to be a passive member of a political community. If this is the case, what differentiates the civic-minded citizen from the rest?
To put it simply, A civic-minded citizen is one who is fully committed and actively strives to contribute to the common good. Common good, as defined by the Catechism of the Catholic Church, is a sum total of social conditions which allow people, either as individuals or as groups, to reach their fulfillment more fully and more easily. Sadly, contemporary society has lost sight and sense of the common good. On one extreme, we see hyperpartisanship, ethnocentrism, and racism. These are variants of tribalism, an exclusive focus on the interests of one's group and that alone. On the other, we see extreme individualism, as manifested in consumerism, cynicism, and apathy on the affairs which do not directly concern one's welfare. Moreover, contemporary citizenship seems to be too focused on claiming rights and privileges from the political community, instead of performing one's duties and responsibilities to advance the state's development. In the end, the consequence of these social maladies is the marginalization of weaker members of society and the alienation of people from their dignity and true purpose, that is, to pursue and contribute to the common good. If citizenship is a viable solution to the threats of this society, how can the family be a school for citizenship? We often define the family as the basic unit of any society, for it is the primary community which the person belongs to. It is the community where we learn to live with people other than ourselves, as well as to experience being under the authority and to exercise camaraderie with others.
In this small community, we acquire the most enduring lessons in life through the example and experience of being with our parents, siblings, and extended family. As Pope Francis said in Amoris Laetitia, the family is the first school of human values, where we learn the wise use of freedom. Certain inclinations develop in childhood and become so deeply rooted that they remain throughout life, either as attractions to a particular value or a natural repugnance to certain ways of acting. Many people think and act in a certain way because they deem it to be right on the basis of what they learned, as if by osmosis, from their earliest years. That's how I was taught. That's what I learned to do.
How can we transform these seemingly banal days with our family into teaching moments? Our experience in our families can teach us three important virtues which are essential to the Christian way of citizenship.
The first one is fraternity. Like the Good Samaritan, he did not view the wounded man as a potential threat or a foreigner. Instead, he saw the victim as a fellow man. He saw his value and his worth as a human being. Because of that, he did not hesitate to help the man recover from his sorry state. As Christians, we are called to see our fellow men as brothers and sisters in Christ Jesus. In Fratelli Tutti, Pope Francis wishes that, by acknowledging the dignity of each human person, we can contribute to the rebirth of a universal aspiration to fraternity. No one can face life in isolation. By ourselves, we risk seeing mirages, things that are not there. Dreams, on the other hand, are built together. Let us dream then as a single human family, as fellow travelers sharing the same flesh, as children of the same earth which is our common home, each of us bringing the richness of his or her beliefs and convictions, each of us with his or her own voice, brothers and sisters all. Fraternity allows us to realize that our personal development is inherently linked to the common good of our families and society at large.
We experience this reality in the family where we first encounter and interact with other people aside from ourselves. We do not consider our family as other people. We share the same flesh and blood as well as the successes and failure that come along with it. We see this in the most common of activities, the family meal. Here, we do not only share bread with our family, We share the ups and downs of our day. We share what made us worried and what made us happy. Oftentimes, this is also where we discuss issues and concerns that transcend our own home. Sometimes we even debate and disagree. Ultimately, we realize that sharing a meal with our loved ones, that we are not alone. Our happiness and sorrow is something that we share with our family, and in the process, they become our family's concern. Christian citizenship starts with this realization. The concern of others are also our concerns because we all share the same humanity. This realization will be strengthened if we constantly engage in dialogue with others. Our friends, our neighbors, our classmates, our colleagues, or even the strangers that we encounter in our everyday lives. Prior to the pandemic, Joyce and I would often take cab rides going home, and one of the things that we would usually do is to engage the driver in a conversation. In doing so, we often realize how different other people can view issues from how we view it. But what always struck us is that despite differences in opinion, we share the same goals. It leads us to realize that despite differences in wealth, education, religion, or point of view, we share the same humanity. It is not accidental that we express this aspiration by using the familial noun brothers and sisters.
The second virtue is charity, specifically self-giving. Going back to the parable, what distinguished the Samaritan from the Levite or priest is not just how he viewed the poor man, but what he actually did for him. Recognizing our fellow men as our brother or sister would naturally lead us to work for their welfare.
Again, we realize it first in our families. Parents embody charity through the sacrifice of working to put food on the table and striving to make homes bright and cheerful. As children, we learn how to love not just by knowing the word, but by doing chores that contribute to the life of our respective homes. When our families experience problems and difficulties, we selflessly take time to contribute to its solutions. And even if the solutions are not within reach, the mere act of being present and accompanying our family through difficulties teaches us the power of charity. Self-giving in the family makes us realize that it is not enough just to be aware that we belong to a community. The natural consequence of fraternity is to work and contribute towards the common good. Christian citizenship is animated by the same spirit. Pope Francis in Fratelli Tutti puts it succinctly. It is an act of charity to assist someone suffering. But it is also an act of charity, even if we do not know the person, to work to change the social condition that caused his or her suffering. If someone helps an elderly person cross the river, that is a fine act of charity. The politician, on the other hand, builds a bridge, and that too is an act of charity. While one person can help another by providing something to eat, the politician creates a job for the other person, and thus practices a lofty form of charity that ennobles his or her political activity. Charity in the context of Christian citizenship is not limited to donating to orphanages or volunteering in soup kitchens. Christian charity entails working for the common good through one's profession. In the same way that our individual roles in the family contribute to the common good, our dedication to our work and our deliberate efforts to effect positive change are concrete ways by which we can practice charity.
The last virtue is mercy. When Jesus asked about who among the three personalities in the parable proved neighbor to the victim, the scholar of the law knew that the answer is the Samaritan, the one who has shown mercy. In Misericordiae Vultus, Pope Francis asserts that mercy is the criterion for ascertaining who God the Father's true children are. Mercy is a specific form of charity. We give not only what is due to our neighbor, but also serve their needs unconditionally. In the case of the Good Samaritan, he never thought twice about helping the wounded man. He never calculated the cost of tending to the victim's wounds in terms of time, effort, and even money. He just helped anyway. In fact, he even told the innkeeper that he will pay whatever additional expense they will incur from helping this man recover. This is mercy, an unconditional love for others without calculation of personal costs. It is unavoidable for us to commit mistakes and hurt each other unintentionally. As a family, we try our best to point out our loved ones' areas for improvement, forgive them for their faults, and make space for amicable disagreements. If we have this habit of accepting our own defects, understanding each other's struggles, and making allowances for failings and differences, we grow in the virtue of mercy within the family. Consequently, if we have this attitude, we will have the heart to love a world that is immensely beautiful, yet imperfect and in need of salvation. It will be less difficult to engage in dialogue with those we fundamentally disagree with, arrive at reasonable compromises as we inch our way into a more perfect social order, and agree to disagree in matters that are within the bounds of personal freedom. After all, we do not correct mistakes, address errant behavior, or solve problems for perfection's sake. As Christians, we help our loved ones and fellow citizens achieve not only their full potential, but also their salvation.
Instilling these three virtues in the family is a daunting task, especially for parents. However, we cannot be content with families that merely provide physical nourishment and material security. We have to have more families which form good Samaritans, individuals who exercise fraternity, charity, and mercy, not only with their loved ones, but also with their fellow citizens.
In this challenge, we turn to the example of the Holy Family, the first community that our Lord encountered as a man. Saint Joseph, for one, is a well-known carpenter in Nazareth. His good reputation is passed on to Jesus, who is known as the carpenter's son. He must be so good in his craft for his son to inherit such a reputation. But it shows that Saint Joseph used his noble craftsmanship to contribute positively to the community life of Nazareth. Similarly, Mother Mary is one who shows her maternal concern even to far relatives. In Cana, we see her moving Jesus to perform his first miracle. She simply said, "They have no wine." She made the concern of the newly married couple her own. The Holy Family is a real-life example of how families instill the habits of citizenship to its members.
Whenever social policy is discussed, we often hear how the state should protect the family as an institution. We know how important it is for the state to promote the development of families. But the reverse is also true. The state is likewise dependent on the family for its own well-being and development. Through the family, the state can have citizens who recognize the value of their fellow men and who positively contribute to the common good.
With grace, prayer, and perseverance in our personal and family struggle for sanctity, we can slowly populate society with good Samaritans, one family at a time.